Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Angela Brennan and today I'm bringing you Simon Hurley's Birthday Bash collection from Spellbinders. I've got the birthday sentiments here, which is a hot foil plate with coordinating dies, and it's all about sentiments. When hot foiling, I always use the Hammermill premium cardstock, which is a 100-pound cardstock, and it's really smooth and perfect for hot foiling. So you've got the perfect cardstock, hot foil from Spellbinders, and you need to make sure you know what your hot foil machine temperature needs to be to get the perfect foiling. So I use the GEMINI Foilpress, and I tend to always use the medium setting at about 20 to 25 seconds, and I almost always get perfect hot foiling. So I do lots of hot foiling once I have my machine ready. So the GEMINI Foilpress complements the GEMINI Junior really well, and you need to see what hot foil machine you use and understand how it works, and it's all about trial and error, and once you know how it works perfectly. Here I'm just checking to see whether it works, and here you go, perfect hot foiling of teal hot foil, and here is with the polished brass hot foil. I've got loads here. I've used espresso, silver, and a whole load of other hot foils, and the coordinating die makes it perfect to get all your sentiments ready for the cards you're going to make. So I make a whole load of sentiments and I have a collection of it, so it's ready when I make the various cards I'm going to make. So die cutting these sentiments all together is so convenient. I really hope you give hot foiling a try because it's really easy to do once you get the hang of it. And here is some negative hot foiling, and I used the larger hot foil plate from Catherine Pooler. You can use the Spellbinders one, but it's a little small. I prefer using the larger one. I've got both of it linked in the description below so you can see what you want. And here is all the positive and negative hot foiling of sentiments that I've done. Now coming to all of the other products that I've got to use in the Birthday Bash collection by Simon Hurley. You've got 3D embossing folders, a die set, coordinating layered stencil set, and of course the sentiments. I do love it when I get a collection where everything coordinates so well together and it makes creating cards so much fun. I start off by doing ink blending. You know how I love to do my ink blending. And with ink blending, I think the 3 ingredients you need is the right paper. And here I'm using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth Card. The second ingredient is using domed foam pads, which I'm using here. And the third and final ingredient is to make sure your ink pads are nice and juicy. So make sure you have your ink refills with all of your ink pads so you can ink them accordingly and get some amazing ink blending. I do spend a little bit of time thinking of my ink blending that I want to do, because whenever I use embossing folders and I do embossing, I like to have some really nice ink blended card panels to do embossing. So here when I do ink blending, I tend to go back and forth, especially with the light colors, so that blend is nice and smooth, and I always ensure that I use a stamp chamois to clear the surface that I'm doing so my inks are not contaminated when I'm using the various inks on a card panel. You just need to get used to doing this, and ink blending takes a little bit of practice. And if you're a beginner, start with Distress Oxide inks and use domed foam pads because it makes for a smoother ink blending, and Distress Oxide inks is easier to ink blend compared to distressed inks. Once you get the hang of ink blending with Distress Oxide inks, go ahead and try it with distressed inks because they're just as nice a result that you can get, but it just takes a little bit more practice. So just quick back and forth with the 2 colors that meet, which, like for example, you see the Dusty Concord as well as the Fired Brick. You just go back and forth and you can get some amazing ink blendings. And here I show you quite a few ink blends that I have. And I'll put in the link in the description below a video that I have with a whole load of ink combinations for Distress Oxide inks as well as distress inks. And I hope that gives you a lot of inspiration. And I do enjoy using distress ink combinations to do embossed and debossed image, to do a compare and contrast on how they look for each of the embossing folders. All of the embossing folders I use in this collection are 3D embossing folders, and I do love ink blending and seeing how they look and use my various embossing techniques with embossing folders. I think it's so much fun. I really hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, remember to press that notification bell so you're alerted when new videos are uploaded. As usual, before embossing, always spritz some water onto the back of the inked card panel so you can soften the fibers in the card panel and it prevents cracking. And after you emboss it, put some heavy objects onto it so it dries straight and the card panel is not warped and it's easier to adhere onto a card front. So I've done the embossed image. Now I'm going to do the debossed image with the same color combination of ink blending just to see how it looks. There are some amazing embossing folder techniques you can do with embossed and debossed images, and I try that here. It doesn't always work with all motifs or all patterns of an embossing folder, but it's worth giving it a try, and I show you how I do that here. This is the Plaster 3D embossing folder, and I do love it. I can see myself using this embossing folder for many cards to come in the future. And here I use a rainbow ink panel to do an embossed and debossed image. Now, because of the nature of the image here, the embossed and debossed image doesn't have a huge difference. It's just a different plastered image, but pretty much the same kind of look you achieve. So it really depends on the motif and the pattern of the embossing folder when you try embossing folder techniques. I'm just using a large ink blending tool and applying the espresso crisp dye ink very lightly just so it captures the raised images of the embossed panel here. And I just wanted to get a distress look against the rainbow ink panel. I like how it turned out. What I do is, after I do all these embossing techniques, I will turn all of this into cards. Just continue watching the video and you'll see how I turn all of this into cards. This is the splatter white opaque watercolor from Spellbinders, and I put it into a little glass bowl so I don't waste any. And I use my splat box so I don't mess up my craft area. And I'm just putting some splatters onto my inked, rainbow inked and embossed card panel. I think putting the splatter white ink in a bowl, you save a lot. This is a different technique here. I'm just putting some really light application of metallic silver pigment ink onto the embossed image of the Flourish 3D embossing folder. Just put it very lightly because you just want to hit the raised embossed image. And I like the way it turned out. And finally here, you've got this debossed image, and I'm using the VersaFine Clair Medieval Blue ink and just highlighting all or inking all the flat bits of the debossed image. Now, it's not quite what I would want in a debossed image, but I just wanted to try and see how it looks. And I do make this into a card as well. This is the Party Balloon 3D embossing folder, and I'm going to start off by embossing it. I only emboss with this because I don't think the debossed works with this, and you got to see how it works. And it comes with a coordinating layered stencil set, and it's also got a mylar balloon die set, which all kind of works together, and that's really good when you have coordinating products to use. And this is one of the ink blended card panels which are embossed with the Party Balloons 3D embossing folder, and I'm just going to make a card with it, and you'll see different ways to use it. So I'm just placing the embossed and inked panel onto my stamp wool, which is a sticky mat, and you can use any sticky mat that's in the market. And I'm using the coordinating layered stencils to do some ink blending. What I'm doing here is I'm just highlighting all of the balloons here with just slightly darker inks, so you have the balloons popping out from the embossed card panel. That's what I'm trying to do, and I hope it works. I think it works. When I do the final card, you can make that judgment yourself. So I continue doing this with all of the similar colors. This is a great color combination for a masculine card. I always think masculine and feminine cards when I make cards or when I put cards together, because it's so easy to make feminine cards with all the various flowers and foliage we have. And this is an amazing way to make a masculine card. And it's all about color combination. If you want to make this into a feminine card, you just need to use pinks and reds or something and purples. You just can change the color combination and change the gender of the card you want to give the person to. It's really, really fun to do. Per usual, I do get carried away and make more than a dozen cards with this birthday bash collection, and you'll see all of it at the end of the video, where you can see close-up pictures of all the completed cards. I do show you the assembly of most of these cards, not all of them, if not the video will be way too long, but you get the gist of how I use all of the products within the birthday bash collection to create some amazing cards. I do like colorful cards, especially when the theme is a birthday bash collection, so I do get a lot of color into my cards. I really hope you give this techniques with the embossing folders a try, because I think it's really fun to try embossing folder techniques, because you can get some amazing looks with really, really quick. So here I'm just attaching the card to the embossing folder with Best Ever Craft tape, and then I'm inking the flat side of the embossing folder, and I do this quite a few times because the ink is quite light, just to get a bit of background to the party balloons 3D embossing folder before I use the layered stencils to color the balloons. Give this a go. I mean, I'm not really overly excited about the color combinations that I use here, but I do make another card with a black background, and I really like that card better, so do check it out towards the end of the video. After a couple of hours, once the background Distress Oxide inks have dried, I sprinkle some white embossing powder onto the white pigment ink that I've put on the highlights of those balloons, just to give it a little bit of a shinier highlight. So I put some white embossing powder and I melt the embossing powder with my heat tool. You need to leave it for a couple of hours so the embossing powder doesn't mess up with the background, because the white ink is also pigment and the background, which is distress oxide inks, is also pigment, and it takes a little bit longer to dry. It's not pigment, but it takes a little bit longer to dry. So I think using the embossing powder gives it a little bit more of a brighter highlight. Here I use the metallic ink to kind of highlight the strings of the balloons. I use any metallic ink really, but I'm using gold here, and I think the gold stands out quite well. You can use any ink really to highlight various aspects of the embossing that you have so that it stands out once you've completed the embossing. Here I'm using again gold metallic uniball pen that I have. With the Party Balloons 3D embossing folder, you can just emboss it as is with an inked panel or a plain panel, or you can also add the Mylar balloon die sets to add some additional interest to the card. And I do that because I do like having the additional dimension to the card front with the die set, the Mylar balloons die set. And I just ink it. I do the die cutting separately for the background of the balloon as well as the balloon, that the front bit, which I give it a bit of dimension with some dimension tape. It's easy enough to do, straightforward, but I think the impact when you put it in the card front is quite brilliant. I do love mixing up the various products within the Birthday Bash collection to create these cards. So you've got the embossed image, which are highlighted with metallic ink, and now I'm using the Mylar balloon die set to attach some balloons onto it, and going to use the birthday sentiments Glimmer hot foil to add the sentiment. So it's really mixing up all the various products within this collection to create some amazing cards. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, remember to press that notification bell so you're alerted when new videos are uploaded. Do wait till the end of the video to see close-up pictures of all the cards I've created. And all of the products I've used are listed in the description below for your ease of reference. Thank you so much for stopping by. Happy crafting, and I'll catch you at my next video. Do take care.